In your darkest of nightmares, a serial killer lives in the creepiest house on the block. He awaits to ambush his prey behind the backside of her unguarded house. He stalks his victims with a killer instinct in the darkness of night. He causes police to seek counseling after gut-wrenching, gruesome crime scenes. But what we could never imagine is that the killer is the woman who is your next-door neighbor. Whether she seeks the support of an accomplice or does the deed herself, these are the stories of female serial killers. In today's episode of Female Serial Killers, we bring you Eileen Wuornos. Body count, 7 or more men. Florida's highways and byways. A causeway to anywhere you want to get. In southern Florida to Disneyland, or in northern Florida to where Eileen murdered 7 men. Most people, including Eileen's lesbian lover, had no idea that she was a cold-blooded killer, let alone a cold-blooded serial killer. Eileen was a great friend to her friends by day, but by night she would don the demeanor and mannerisms of a street-walking prostitute. For well over a decade, she traded sexual favors for monies from total strangers that she solicited on the I-75 corridor in northern and central Florida. That is until one day Eileen decided that she was no longer performing sexual favors for cash, but that she would rob the dead men's bodies she solicited for that same money. Since Eileen ended each false solicitation by taking the life of her customers, she had no way back to the city or highways to where they picked her up. For this reason, Eileen not only stole her customers' money and life, but she also stole their vehicles. She would use their cars as many days as it would take to benefit her, and then she would wipe down the car, including the steering column and the interior of her fingerprints, or anything that would tie her to the murder. Although Eileen didn't kill each John she had solicited, it took her a brief time period between December of 1989 and September of 1990 to kill all 7 men and place her on the FBI's first female serial killer list, with this photo as revealed in the forest at the spot she killed one of her victims. Eileen would kill with wild abandonment, never getting caught by authorities up until the 7th gentleman was murdered. In fact, Eileen would have never been charged, caught, or captured if it were not for the living lesbian that she took care of financially for 4 years, cooperating with authorities in order to prevent her from being arrested in the case. Additionally, she agreed to help the police for a more nefarious reason, and that was to make money off Eileen's back. You see, as the case progressed to the 7th victim, several Hollywood producers came sniffing around town to get the copyrights to the story of the first female killer. Miss Tyria Jolene Moore, her living lesbian lover, along with several investigators on the case, had signed an exclusive movie deal to benefit from the capture of Eileen and her story about what led up to her arrest. For this reason, investigators sequestered Tyria in a low-budget, sleazy motel room and had her call Eileen to trick her into confessing about the slayings. But let's not be too hasty towards Eileen's capture, as we are to uncover her crimes. We start with her first victim, a one Mr. Richard Mallory. Richard Mallory was a 51-year-old Clearwater, Florida electronics shop owner. On the evening of his death, Richard closed up his electronic business for the weekend near Daytona Beach, Florida. On his way home to enjoy the weekend, he passed Eileen with her thumb out, hitchhiking, and gave her a ride. This would be the last ride that Richard would give to anyone on Earth. On December 1, 1989, a deputy in Volusia County discovered Richard Mallory's beige Cadillac abandoned in the woods with no signs of Richard. His nude, decomposing body was discovered 12 days later on December 13th, several miles away in a wooded area. Mallory had been shot several times, but it was Eileen's two well-placed bullets to Richard's left lung that were found to have caused hemorrhaging and ultimately Richard's death. Eileen's next victim's bloated corpse would emerge into the public light 190 days after her first killing. His name? Mr. David Spears. David was a 43-year-old Winter Garden, Florida construction worker whose bullet-ridden body was discovered on June 1st of 1990 along Highway 19 in Florida's Citrus County. Investigators would note that except for a baseball cap, Spears was completely nude. He had died of 6 bullet wounds to the torso. Eileen had started to increase her male body count as well as her bullets to the body count. The only thing that Eileen was no longer increasing was the time in between killings. Once a person has killed another individual, it is not a leap in the future to use the solution to the problem. Her next notch in the belt of murdered men would come on the 6th day of June 1990. Only 5 days after David Spears' body was discovered, did authorities find the partially nude body of Mr. Charles Kirkskadden. Charles Kirkskadden, aged 40 years, was a part-time rodeo worker who had been shot 9 times in the chest and stomach with a small caliber handgun. By the time the first female serial killer would make it to trial, many people would question why she shot Charles Kirkskadden so many times if, in her words, she was only trying to defend herself against him. His body was found in a secluded area of a forest like the previous 2 cases. Now, Wuornos originally stated that this was an act of self-defense, but later admitted that she committed this murder in cold blood. It would appear that her entire defense would be lost on the jury as they saw her in a hunt for the almighty dollar. And whether that dollar was covered in blood or not, Eileen coveted cold-blooded murder for cold cash. Eileen would admit during her subsequent interrogation that she was motivated to rob these men because her live-in lesbian lover, who later sold her out, spent money like it was water. Eileen would complain that it was hard enough to keep up with monthly payments on the motel room she and her lover shared because of wasting money she earned through prostitution. Eileen's next unsuspecting victim would be Mr. Troy Barris. Troy Barris' body was found 59 days after her third kill by police in Marion County, Florida on August 4th, 1990. Barris, a sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida, was actually reported missing on July 31st of 1990. Troy's body was already decomposing when it was found by police. Like Eileen's other victims, Barris' body was found in a secluded area near some forest along State Road 19 in Marion County. Furthermore, he was very well liked, said to be a hardworking, respected person in the community, and somebody that this should not happen to. When examined, 2 gunshot wounds to the torso were found to be the cause of his death. Troy Barris was 50 years old. Eileen, now secure with the temporary cash needed to cover her daily needs for a month, would rest that distance before killing again. When next Eileen would hit the road, she would target her victim based upon how much immediate cash he had in his wallet and how much he trusted her so that she can get the jump behind him. Eileen's next target for robbery and murder under the guise of being a damsel in distress would come a mere 39 days after shooting her previous victim. Her newest target, a one Mr. Charles Dick Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys was a retired Air Force major and a former police chief and child abuse investigator in the state of Florida. Humphreys just happened to offer Eileen a ride out of the brutal heat of Florida's Interstate 75. Charles was known to be a family man and well respected by his colleagues at work. His body was found on September 12, 1990, in a section of secluded forest under a piece of carpeting in Marion County near the Ocala-Florida state line. Humphreys had multiple gunshot wounds to the torso, and in a new portion of the body, she was now targeting in men, his head. 7 days later, investigators found his car outside Live Oaks in Suwannee County. Stolen from Humphrey's recovered vehicle were his briefcase, a chief's badge from the Sylacauga, Alabama Police Department, and his wallet, which was flush with cash. If you are a gentleman who frequents ladies of the night, I would suggest that you heed the message of this video by thinking twice before letting someone into your car that you do not know. This particular woman counted on the trust of these men to let her into their vehicles. They thought, as society does about women, that there is no way she would hurt me. I'm sure that most of these men spent their entire lives watching out for harm coming from other burly men than they would have Eileen, which was her secret weapon. If her next victim would have driven by her instead of pulling over, he might still be alive today. Mr. Peter Sims, 65 years of age, will become her sixth victim. Peter had left Florida, headed for New Jersey on vacation in June of 1990. Peter's car was found on July 4th, 1990 in Orange Springs, Florida, without Peter. Unfortunately, Peter's body was never recovered, nor did Eileen tell authorities where she dumped his body. But in killing Peter, Eileen would spell her own doom by having an accident in his stolen vehicle. By hitting a tree with her lesbian lover in the car, they had no choice but to flee the scene as the car became inoperable. Witnesses told police they saw two women near his car in Orange Springs after the accident. Witnesses gave an eyewitness description of the couple to a sketch artist, which led to an APB being put out on the pair. During Eileen's trial, Wuornos continually denied being responsible for his murder, although there was very strong evidence linking her to the stolen car. Similar to another vehicle, Sims was said to be a very good person, easygoing, and very religious as well. Inside Peter's stolen vehicle was an entire finger and palm print belonging to Eileen. Much later in the sentencing, where she testified that she killed Peter without telling police where his body was.
You're watching M&N, the Men's Channel.
On the day Eileen went hunting for her last victim to rob and kill, she had no idea that police were expanding all efforts with the Federal Bureau of Investigative Services to close in on her location. The last of 7 men to die at the hands of Eileen would be Mr. Walter Gino Antonio, age 62 years. Mr. Antonio was a trucker, a sometime security guard, and a member of the reserve police within the county he had been murdered. On November 19, 1990, Antonio's nearly nude body was found near a remote logging camp road in Dixie County, Florida. Walter had been shot 4 times in the back and in his head. This was her new MO. 5 days following the discovery of Walter's body, his car was found in Brevard County, Florida, which was 210 miles away from the location he had been murdered. This location to ditch the car was excellent for Eileen because she only lived an hour away in the motel near Daytona Beach, Florida. But it was not finding the last car that got Eileen captured, as much as it was the car she ditched before this one. What led to the capture of Eileen, beyond being betrayed by her lover, that is, the incident with her lover and herself fleeing an accident. If we journey back to the 4th of July of 1990, when Wuornos and her female lover, Moore, abandoned Peter Siem's car after they were involved in an accident. Now, witnesses who had seen the woman driving the victim's car provided police with their names and descriptions, resulting in a statewide media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the murdered victims' belongings in a pawn shop and retrieved fingerprints matching those found in the victims' cars. Wuornos had a criminal justice record in Florida from her fingerprints that were on file. The fingerprints on file, on the other hand, did not match the alias that Werner gave the pawn shop owner. On 9 January 1991, which was 51 days after Eileen discarded her last victim's car, she was arrested on an outstanding warrant at the Last Resort, a biker bar in Volusia County, Florida. Police located her girlfriend, Miss Moore, the next day in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where she had fled to avoid charges. Miss Moore agreed to elicit a confession from her girlfriend, Wuornos, in exchange for prosecutorial immunity. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put in a motel room under police guidance. Now, Moore made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos, pleading for help in clearing her name. At one time, she almost promised to commit suicide so she wouldn't go to jail, just to sway Wuornos. 3 days later, on the 6th of January 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed the men had tried to rape her, and she killed them in self-defense. Now, everyone from the arresting officer to the trial lawyer had a hard time understanding how you could kill 7 men for the charge of rape. The first time would have made sense, but the 7 surely was insanity. Wuornos was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death in 6 of the murders she committed, but not on Siem's murder, because his body had never been recovered. If you can remember, she never told where she put his body. 11 years after her last trial, and after all appeals had been exhausted, Eileen Wuornos was brought into the death chamber at Florida State Prison on October the 9th, 2002. She had KFC as her last meal request and was given a $20 budget. Her last words before the execution, as witnesses looked on, were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back. Like Independence Day, the movie with Jesus. Big mothership and all, I'll be back. I'll be back." End quote. On October the 9th, 2002, at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Miss Eileen Wuornos died through lethal injection. In less than 6 minutes after injection of the heart-stopping agent, the woman that led authorities on a multi-county manhunt across the state of Florida was no more. At the time of her execution, she had been the 10th woman in the United States to be executed since the Supreme Court lifted the ban on capital punishment in the year 1976, and the second such woman ever executed in the state of Florida. Join us next time on Female Serial Killers for another episode in Truth. Please like this video, follow the channel, and invite a friend. For MNN, this is Charles Rivers. Good night.